It did give me a record. Welcome to the Sports We Build podcast. This is our first time
This is it.
recording. Yeah, I am Nolan, a husband, father, club owner, business owner, entrepreneur, and this is a new friend, Morgan Schill from the Positive Play Project. We decided, hey, we had this wild idea. Let's record a podcast. So we decided to, and then spent the last 15 minutes before this podcast going, hey, let's talk about the podcast. We decided to finally press record. And this is what you're seeing. So welcome to the show. What is this about? Well, the core idea is that we want to talk about how youth and school sports systems happen. Like, how do we build them that benefits kids in a way where they grow, coaches can lead well, and then parents trust the process, and then organizations can communicate better. So that's what we're working on. And Morgan, you were going to expand upon that a little bit for us.
Sure. Let's see. I think a lot of the shows or conversations happening in this space are really around the symptoms, right, of youth sports culture, school, like the crazy parents or the coach burnout, bad communication. But this podcast, The Sports We Build, is hoping to take that just a little bit deeper and really figure out the systems that are either inhibiting or enabling that type of issues, whatever's causing these issues, right? So that we can really start to find solutions and bring actionable, tangible things that can help make youth sports a better place for our kids.
Yeah, I think we put up with a lot, and I think parents put up with a lot because they don't know better,
Sure.
right? And we were discussing some examples. I think it's easier to find the issues and to point out the problems than it is to hone in on or suggest solutions.
Yeah,
And
of
for yeah,
course. Yeah,
for a lot of parents, I think this is why we're doing this, if I understand everything that we've talked about correctly.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so
Yes.
let's get into it.
We want to bring actionable, like, not just want to talk about it, right? We want to actually make a difference and find solutions to the problems, not just talk about the problems. And I think that everybody in this space that wants to find, like, wants to make it better, right? Or else why would you be doing all of this? But the hope is that we'll really maybe uncover some really great conversations and ideas that could be put into play and make a better impact, a positive impact for these kids. And I know you care about that so much. I do too. So here we are.
Yeah, I might be getting too deep for the first like 3 minutes that we're doing this, but sometimes I think, am I living in a cultural moment that's going to be put into like history books or studied in school decades from now? Not that me personally would be a part of like that, but like, what would I do or how would I respond? And I think the most recent example that seemed like, seems super obvious to us looking back, but sometimes when you're in the moment, are the things that we're battling or the things that we're choosing to spend our time and energy discussing and advocating for change, like as big as some of these historical events or moments that are happening. And I think like one that comes to mind that I've wrestled with is like, if I lived, not knowing what I know now, but if I grew up in the South in the 1960s, the 1950s, like how would I have responded to, stood up with, and supported people of color fighting for human rights? Right. And the answer for me often comes back like, what system or like what family would I have grown up in? Because that would have informed whether or not I was a part of that.
Of course. Right.
So for us, is youth sports like this big cultural thing that's happening right now? And I think you and I think I know what your answer would be, but I'd love to hear it from you. Like, when you consider why you got into this and have been doing the things that you're doing, how do you see yourself as part of the conversation, as part of the solution, as part of the system? Give us, the listeners, a little bit more about like why you're involved.
Yeah. I think there's probably a lot of answers to that question. But I think the thing that I think about the most And to your point about what you just said, my son was a part of a team that maybe like didn't have such a great experience and had been going on and on. And at one point I told my husband, I was like, I finally had stood up and stepped in and tried to take action to make it better. And we were like so close to the end of the season. My husband was like, Morgan, we were so close. Like you couldn't, just like let it go. And I was like, you know what? Because if I continue to be a part of it and say nothing or do nothing, then I'm complacent and almost like allowing this behavior to be okay. And it's not. And I don't want my kids to think that I would allow that type of behavior or that I believe that that's okay or that I'm afraid to stand up and say something or do something different. And so for me, it was wanting to take action to make something that I see that needs some work and some love to be better and to share whatever wisdom or ideas or start a conversation or get people together who have way more knowledge than I do to find a solution to these problems. I think that thinking like, going deep and thinking about history, I think the worst thing that you can do is nothing. Like to me, if you're not trying to make it better or at least taking a stance one way or the other, to me, you're just as much part of the problem then, right? Like, stand up and, like, if you care about something or you recognize that something's not right, like, let's do something about it, and I know in this, like, these world and these times, like, there's so much information and so much knowledge and, media being shared at you all the time, and it can be overwhelming, but I think you're right. I think, sports, we just saw it in the World Cup, like, it can be such an amazing thing where people come together and there's love and joy and celebration. And obviously, like only one team can win the World Cup. But think about all the amazing experiences that people and families had. And we saw it like the joy of countries coming together and like the emotions. It's beautiful. It's like such an amazing, I was like so sad that the World Cup is over because I loved that feeling of like joy that sports can bring, and so I care like, both had amazing sports experiences, if it's impacted our lives so positively, I hope that I can, even if it's just for one kid, like, something I do makes a better experience for one kid, then it was worth it.
Yeah. No, yeah. I already can attest to, I think, the difference that you're making. And
Thanks.
so, if anything, if I, there's just one thing I saw our friend, we run in similar circles, right? And our friend
We do.
over at Healthy Sports Parents, he has a lot of very specific conversations and we love what he's doing. And, one thing he said is like the three types of coaches that your kid is going to have. And I forget what the first one was. If you know it, let me know. But it's like one was the teacher, one was the mentor, and then, oh, the tactician, I think is what it was. Right. So like the three topics. And I wanted to comment, and maybe this is the place for it, but this is how I see myself in the grand scheme of things. And it's like I almost wanted to add a fourth coach, which we have one of those on our staff. I try to be all of the things, not egotistically, but just like, hey, how can I improve my tactical skills? How can I improve my teaching skills, like my communication skills? How can I improve my mentoring skills? And I think it's in the mentoring side that I would throw in like a 3B or a fourth one, which is be like the encourager. Right. And so like when I say that, and I think you're doing great work. I'm excited that we're doing this and to hopefully multiply, where we are in the conversation. But if anything, if any of you that are listening get anything from this is one, the worst thing you do is nothing. So I hope that if you're listening to this, you're getting encouraged because Morgan, you've told me stories about somebody who responded and said, man, because of that thing that you said or that
Yeah,
you did, I went ahead and just signed up and started doing it. And not everybody's like that. Like inactivity often comes from, I don't know what my next step is.
sure.
So then I'm rendered motionless because I don't know what's next. Like, hopefully, as we talk each episode about the different systems that aren't working, and we give examples of systems that are working and examples and the things that people are building, that you'll be encouraged or inspired to go do something where
Yeah,
you are. And if anything, just by us talking and having these conversations that you can listen to this and be encouraged. I listen to too many true crime podcasts, and I don't often leave those podcasts encouraged, but I still listen.
Right. Well,
So,
yeah, I think knowledge is power, right? And having the conversation, whether you agree or disagree or have a different perspective, that you're even if you listen to this, that's taking an action. Like enough you care to even be engaged in the conversation, I think is a great place to start. But yeah, this is a space that's complex and I know it gets a lot of negative attention lately, but there is so much positive, wonderful things happening. And so, to your point of like, let's figure out what is working. Somebody's doing it well somewhere, and has probably learned a lot. Like, let's amplify that and share it out so others can also figure out, take pieces that would work for them or their league or their coaching style and make it better everywhere.
yeah, which is, I think, brings us to where something that you and I discussed was, hey, we can share stories that we research and find. And so
Hmm.
if you're listening to this and you're commenting this, like DM us with your story. Tell us
Yes.
the things that you're doing. And I know that there's individuals out there who are doing things and they get invited to talk about what they're doing and what they're building. And so we might have some guests on here, right? So we want to hear from you because we don't know everything. Like I know, I want to hear about the details about what you're building. And we don't have to talk about that today. We can if we want to. But I also know that you and I talked about the things that I'm building where I live. So tell us where you're from so that we can get an idea and like the space that you live in, because there's going to be folks from cities. There's going to be folks from the West Coast, East Coast, Southern, Midwest, rural, that sort of thing, medium size. So tell us where you're from in your context, your perspective, and then I'll share mine.
See, if I go way back to the beginning, I'm kind of from all of those places. So I'll start at the very beginning. I was born in Montana, of all places. Back when
Montana,
Montana wasn't cool, like it was
big sky.
not, it's not like it is now. Yeah. And then I spent most of my childhood in Washington State, which is also
Did
where
you
I
take
went
a
to
covered wagon
college.
out there?
Yeah. On the Oregon Trail.
You didn't get dysentery?
We made it. All the ox,
Okay,
everybody.
that's good. I'm sorry, you talked to me about the girls that you coached to ask you how old you were. So continue. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I moved to New York in my early 20s, spent about 10 years there, which is like did the big city life. And now I'm in North Carolina and live in let's say it's a small town. It's a medium sized town just north of Charlotte and have our family here. So our leagues and systems for youth sports are like, we have all the things. So the league that I operate is a combination of all of the different schools in our area have a league that then we work with. So there's 3 leagues and we're all kind of a part of the same league. So we play each other, we work together, we divvy up responsibilities of like booking gyms and referees and scores, like all of those things, which is I think somewhat unique. I had never experienced that previously. And then we have we have Mooresville Parks and Rec, which is through the city. We have travel leagues. We have different baseball leagues that have came in. Like so, we have the whole gamut here, which is a very long-winded answer to your question of starting off being born in Montana and how I ended up here. But
That's wild to me. You went from Montana to Washington to New
yeah,
York to the Carolinas.
hmm
I'm a big fan of the Carolinas.
same. I
I
would
mean,
have never.
we
I mean, I've never thought I would live here. Like growing up on the West Coast, it just was like so far off my radar. But now that we're here, we love it. It's amazing. It's a great place.
but I hear from like Southern, like South Carolina folks, and you can abstain from giving your opinion on South Carolina folks if you want to. But I know that they get a lot of New York transplants.
Yes, both Carolinas do. When we moved here, my son was 6 years old. My mother-in-law was like, "Morgan, do you think Harrison's going to have a Southern accent growing up here?" And I was like, Are you kidding me? In this neighborhood, he'll just sound like he's from Long Island. Like every neighbor and friend that we have is
He's
from up north. So yes, everybody here is a transplant from either out west, like California, or the Northeast somewhere. Typically,
okay.
we
Okay. Yeah.
came and ran it over. Carolinas are it's fair. It's rare to find somebody who's like born and raised true Carolinian.
Yeah, that's interesting. My wife and
Hmm.
we had our wedding ceremony in the Outer Banks of North Carolina.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been, man, 13 years ago?
Congrats.
2014, so 12 and a half years ago. Yeah. So we love North Carolina. I've been to the Outer Banks a couple times, but that's not where you are. You're north of Charlotte.
Yeah. South Carolina is very close. So like right south of Charlotte is the line. So like
Right,
North
right.
and South Carolina are sort of like one package at that point
Yeah, one of our team members lives, shoot, I'm gonna get it wrong, but just outside of Charlotte. So, like, on our
in South
marketing team
Carolina,
in I think so.
like Fort Mill.
Like, it's, like, right there. I think they've got family in Fort Mill. So,
Cool place.
yeah. But, like, it I meet more and more people from the Carolinas. My wife and I discuss, like, "Hey, if we didn't live where I live now is Central Illinois." So I live in what I would call a tiny city. And I say that on purpose because we're maybe 6,000 people, but we have a nuclear power plant here in Clinton, Illinois. Yeah. So we have a nuclear power plant, which because of that, we have a hospital, a fire, police, the county police are here.
I see. Okay.
There's, yeah, judicial court is here. We've got a city library. We've got 2 grocery stores. We have God's gift to convenience stores, and that's Casey's General Stores. Now, they started out of Iowa. So for us being here in Illinois, that's the reason why you all have not been able to benefit because they just haven't expanded that far yet. They didn't do a Chick-fil-A, right?
Hmm.
That went everywhere, which we are getting a Chick-fil-A like 20 minutes from our house, which is 15, 20 minutes closer than the other Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
None of
I
this
never had
matters.
Chick-fil-A till I moved to New York. No, it doesn't matter. It sounds like the dream. You have like all the amenities and the cool things of like in a city, but in a small town setting.
Correct. So yeah, people are like, yeah, I live in a small town. Like what's interesting about our context is yes, 6,000 people, well-funded school district, but our demographic is low income. So even though we've got all of this stuff and there's tax dollars that go to a number of different things, Clinton is still considered low income, which matters for a lot of areas that encounter the sports equity conversation and access. And we have that here. So I'm originally from the Chicagoland area. So Chicago resides in Cook County, Illinois, or the state of Cook. A lot of folks down here wish that Chicago was its own state. But I love growing up in the burbs of Chicago. We would go to Navy Pier, we'd go to North Avenue Beach. We spent our summers driving 20, 30 minutes to all the different stuff in Chicago. Have you ever been? Okay. I met some folks recently that had never been to Chicago, and I
Yeah.
had the joy of telling them about all my favorite pizza places in
I
Chicago.
got to go to Chicago in college. This is gonna I was like real nerd moment coming out here. So my undergraduate degree is in human resource management, and there's a SHRM conference in Chicago one of the years, and so like my whole little SHRM chapter from school got to go, and we like went to the did the whole thing. It was really cool. I would love to go back. It was a really cool city.
Yes. And if you
Mhm.
need pizza places, you let me know.
I mean,
But I
I'm
like that
a New Yorker, a little, so
you
that's a
could
little bit of a tough
we
sell,
will
but
let that slide.
okay,
Like it's New York might be the greatest city or like the biggest city, and
with the
Chicago's
best
not even
pizza.
number. We'll have to start. I want to, where this is going to get derailed in the first
Well,
episode.
thanks for listening, folks. This was the one and only.
We got to settle this though. Is it New York pizza or Chicago pizza? But Chicago can't even be called second city anymore because LA is now the number 2 city as far as
Really?
population.
Mm,
Yeah, so number 1's New York, number 2's LA, and number 3 is Chicago. But
maybe that's a
that's
good
not
thing.
maybe. I mean, my favorite number is 3. That's my baseball number from
There you
college,
go. I
is
see it.
number 3, so I'll take it. However, you're not living in a big city. How far are you from Charlotte?
25 minutes, 20 minutes.
But still far enough away. Like our closest Charlotte-esque type place is Bloomington Normal, Illinois, where Illinois State University is. And if you were to combine their populations, you're going to get over 100,000.
Hmm.
But it's not like we're near Chicago,
Right.
right? And so that creates different conversations for us. So, I mean, I can tell you about what we're doing, but how do you replicate that somewhere else? And similarly, you could talk about what you're doing, but how do you adapt that geographically? And that's, I think, part of the big question that we're all wrestling with if you're listening to this is there's not a silver bullet or a like a one size fits all
Right.
approach to how we fix this.
Yep. I agree. I think that the complexity of it is what makes it interesting, but also such a challenge. And I think that's why the conversations like this and what's happening need to be had because to your point, there's not one thing that's going to work for everybody in every place. And again, maybe that's a good thing that, it's not all cookie cutter. But I do think that there's so many through lines that are similar as I've chatted with different people in this space. A lot of people are experiencing similar issues. Maybe the solutions aren't going to be the the same for everyone, but it is interesting to hear like whether in New Jersey or California or North Carolina, wherever you are, like similar people are having similar challenges, maybe with different, caveats of what's making it so difficult, but hopefully we can help figure out some solutions that'll help lots of people and or takeaways that, someone else has that will be able to impact positively someone else in a different state, different city.
What's like one of the more consistent things? Because I primarily, so this is what's interesting about our dynamic, is I largely operate in the ed tech space.
Right.
So I coach at our local public high school. I do have experience with our youth sports programs where I live, and we'll get into the stuff that the challenges that we face and the things that I'm building,
Mhm.
to solve that problem. But your background is largely still in the like currently in the rec space.
So I just took over as president of our local rec league. My kids pretty exclusively play rec league sports. I coach in a club level volleyball program, a local program here. So I have like, my fingers in that and I understand like the complexities and how that impacts beyond. But for me, no, I would majority of my I coach in the rec leagues also. That's kind of my world. My kids are young still, so we're not quite to that. And intentionally, I mean, you could be in more serious programs, I guess, if that was your choice. But for us, we're very much in that rec world.
Yeah. How did you? So I think, I guess, with the work that you're doing over at the Positive Play Project, you're interacting, I think, with a lot of parents. Is the feedback that you're getting from that rec slash club space? Is it from the K-12 space? Is it a mixture 70-30, 60-40? Like, what kind of demographic are you finding in the people that are resonating with the content that you're sharing and creating? And then like what's the number one thing, the consistent thing that you're
Yeah.
hearing across these different conversations, comments, and interactions that you're having?
I think a majority of the listeners or like interactions that I'm having, I think are more on the club rec. Like I opted into this sports space, not necessarily through the school. So even the league that that I'm helping right now it's through the school, but it's not like a school-sponsored league. It's not like what you're, like, coaching at the high school per se. And a majority I mean, there's if I had to boil it down to one, I think the biggest I don't know. The biggest issue I think probably is well, I think the biggest issue is that 70% of kids are quitting sports by age 13. Why that's happening, I think, is what I'm, wanting to say as what we're seeing as the biggest issues, but I don't think that that's the actual issue. I think that we're seeing so much less participation beyond a certain age, and and the overall experience that they're having isn't particularly as positive as I think most of us are hoping or wanting it to be for them.
So you think that because there's some context to that statistic is most kids age out of rec
Yes.
after sixth grade,
Yep.
right? And then we get into school sports. School sports largely are cut sports based on the numbers of participation. So that's part of it. And then, I think, and then some more context to that statistic is, especially when you get into school sports, seventh and eighth grade, you've got seasons, rec sports, you could do three sports at once. And that just becomes unsustainable
Right.
once you get to school sports. We were just discussing that yesterday. First day of junior football camp, where we are, practices start next week. We have optional, so it's JFL for short, Junior Football League, and optional camp this week. Kids finished baseball 3 weeks ago. Football camp starting this week. Practices start next week, and it goes to like October 3rd. We're planning something that we'll talk about in, I think, a future episode about like a fall baseball experience, like an alternative baseball experience. And then that's supposed to be sandwiched in between the end of junior high baseball season and then the beginning of youth basketball, third through sixth grade,
Yeah.
with the boys' school program starting in November. We're discussing all this stuff, and this dad tells me, yeah, so B's like, Dad, we spend a lot of time in the truck. And he said, well, yeah, buddy, it's because of the sports you're doing. And so good for this kid. He's in baseball, football, basketball. He did wrestling one year. My son did wrestling and basketball in the same season last year. He was 7 days a week.
It's a
So
lot.
that's some added context to that
Right.
13.
Right.
But even then, do you think then, as we talk about through the context of that statistic, do you find that statistic to be more systematic or like symptomatic? Is it something that just happens, or do you think that there's some other things at play that we can improve on to keep kids in some sort of sport activity, even after they encounter cut sports?
Mhm. Yeah, I definitely think there's things we could do, which I think is why we're here, right? And why you and I in this space
I teed it
to
up for you.
kick.
I just, I mean, I
You know
was
what?
a set. And
I don't know what we're doing.
were you a middle or an outside, right side? Middle. Okay. Yeah. So we just ran a 2.
Yep.
And that good. I'm glad that you put that down on the 10-foot line. So only our volleyball friends will understand
Yeah,
those
I
references.
don't think we've lost a lot of people who know what we're talking about. Yeah. Yes, I definitely think that there's a lot of things contribute to that, and ultimately, the hope I think is that we're gonna try to help figure out how do we tackle that from lots of different angles to be able to give access to kids long enough if they wanna keep playing or to give them a space to be able to do that, or hopefully not ruin it for them so that they, figure out why they're quitting. If why they're quitting is because it's not a great experience or they're having too much pressure or it's not fun whatever. We could talk about all of those things, that there's a solution or ideas or awareness at the minimum to impact that headed in the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's why we're here. We're here because physical activity is super important for kids, team environments, and even if it's individual sports, introducing kids to individual sports and creating systems to where the access is easy. You remove friction points. You create a little bit of buy-in. So how do we get kids to show some level of responsibility and accountability in whether it's the equipment, the court space, or whatever, but providing opportunities in semi-structured ways. I think pickup play is like one of the biggest losses that we've had in like, I think cultural memory. There's all sorts of things that we could point to. But when I think through the sports lens, and this is one of the comments made, surrounding the World Cup and the United States team and how
Mhm.
we structure the system for soccer, like the US men's national soccer team, like the federation oversees that. So we're rebuilding it. We're not going to make the current system cheaper. We're going to build a better system that is more equitable. So that way we can actually compete at higher levels because that's why soccer on one level is so popular is all you need is a ball. And then you have a bunch of kids
Yep.
in free play learning how to do it. We have wiffle ball games here at our house all the time. They're not structured, organized or anything. Our doorbells ring in. We're just an essentially located aspect, like a spot in our neighborhood. And so you'll see on any given day, 3-on-3, 4-on-4, you'll sometimes see one-on-one wiffle ball games that are not being overseen by an adult. So how do we create then in a time where I used to grow up, I was growing up, I used to play a lot of basketball every single day at the local park. It helped that people were up there playing all the time.
Right.
We don't really have a local park that kids will you would have to like bike to. I don't know what it is, and maybe it's different in cities, but we have almost too much organization on some side and then not enough, loose coordination to ensure kids are showing up to the same space so that way free play can even happen. But those are the things that we're going to get into and, without getting into them now at this point in the first show, we want you to come back and listen for more. So I don't have any other thoughts. Do you have any other things that you want to leave for our listeners who have joined us in this journey on this first episode, heading into the next episode?
Hmm. Hope you come back. Just
I
if
encourage
you
you
speak
to
it,
listen.
it will happen, right? Please come
Yes,
back.
they will. They will.
Yeah,
I don't see why they wouldn't. I think there's going to be a lot of good stuff coming. I'm excited about it. And we hope that as you're listening, you don't do what Morgan and I did for the first like 15, 20 minutes before we press record, which was talking about doing something. You know,
exactly.
I've learned that, and one of my favorite mottos, as much as whatever, is I really do lean into like two big things. The first one, and this, we're not sponsored by them yet, but I have resonated with the just do it slogan from Nike. Like, not stereotypically, like, that is just something that when I don't want to do it, I just do it, dude. Just do it. And then I do that. We're big Nike fans at, at our house. And then the second one is from one of my all-time favorite movies. It came out in 1993 or 94, Rookie of the Year. And yes, and I got to meet the kid. He's older than me, actually. And got to meet him a couple weeks ago, and my kids got to meet him. They love this movie, but it's about a kid who breaks his arm and then his tendons heal too tightly, and he can throw the ball 100 miles an hour as a 12-year-old. So what 12-year-old doesn't want to play, that loves baseball, doesn't want to play for a Major League Baseball team as a 12-year-old, right? So there's a scene in that where the kid is struggling. It's his first time on the mound, and they send the veteran Chet Stedman out there to talk to him. And he says, "Hey, go talk to the kid." Like, he's like, "I'm not a pitching coach. I'm a pitcher." So he goes out there and he just gives them this whole spiel about the have to. And he walks away from that interaction. And the kid goes, "What was he talking about?" And Chet's like, "What was I talking about?" And then he gets to the manager. He's like, "What'd you tell him?" He's like, "You don't want to know." And so, like, those are the two big things that like drive me. It's just like, all right, I've always really been like, if something has to be done, I'm just going to do it. And then the other side of it is just like, if I feel like this sense of like, I have to do it, then it's just a have to. It's in there. So
You
that's
think
my
that's
encouragement to,
because so much of your sports training innate in you now, that like confidence to be able to say like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I know I can figure this out. I'm probably not going to be great at it at first, but you know,
Exactly.
just willingness to jump in.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Talking with my buddy about AI written emails. I just made it a point now for me that give me bad English, bad syntax, poor punctuation, and, incorrect use of, you know, past, present, or future in my emails. I'd rather look unprofessional in my emails and know that I'm the one I wrote it versus Morgan, you get it going, gosh, Nolan used Gemini to write that email again. And some of you were
Sure.
like, oh my gosh, like Nolan just put me on blast. I kind of did. I think we need more human interaction. And I think what holds us back for many people is not knowing what to do, but then not wanting to look foolish doing it. And so to your point, like just go out there, know that you might not have all the answers, but if you start asking questions
Mhm.
and you get other like-minded people, good things can
This
happen.
tolerance for discomfort, which I truly believe is like, if not the best, one of the best lessons and muscles that sports builds, which is why I worry or I'm concerned, like when there's not as many kids, but it's not the only way that they can learn it, right? But it's such a great avenue to have that because it translates to all these different things in your lives, like exactly what you just said.
Yeah, 100%. So we're going to get into it every week from now until whenever. So
Can't wait. So excited.
see you next
Genuinely.
episode.
Sounds good.